Hello, Blonde Bombshellers. I'm coming to you tonight with a somber detail yet again. As you know, November 3rd, we lost my dad's stepdad, Mike Harmon, and that was a major loss to our family. So great that what I'm about to say is even greater. January 11th at 11:40, they say 11:40 a.m., but we actually got the call about 11:47 to 48 because I picked up the phone and I was on break. That my grandmother from Carle Hospital, she was at right at that moment, had slipped away and had went to heaven. It is a very hard time for our family. I'm going to read you the obituary, but then I want to take a few moments to celebrate her life and say thank you to a lot of people and send out some special memories as well. Martha Elizabeth McDowell, age 93, of Mattoon, passed away at 11:40 a.m. on Friday, January 11th, 2019 at Carle Foundation Hospital. Funeral service honoring her life began at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, January 15th, 2019, Schilling Funeral Home, with Pastor Kelly Carruthers officiating. Burial will follow at Dodge Grove Cemetery. Visitation for family and friends will be held from 10 a.m. until the time of service on Tuesday at the funeral home. Martha was born on June 25th of 1925 in Wayne County, the daughter of Burl and Pearl Henson. She married William Wayne McDowell on September 8th, 1946. Survivors include her loving husband of 72 years, William Wayne McDowell of Mattoon, Illinois, daughter Marcia Jeanette Harmon of Louisville, Illinois, granddaughter Donna Jeanette Bean of Mattoon, Illinois, grandson Eric Harmon, Effingham, Illinois, special niece Penny McDowell of Mattoon, Illinois, numerous nieces and nephews, beloved cat Sammy. Martha was preceded in death by her parents, son-in-law Michael L. Harmon, brother Otis Dale Henson, brother-in-law Bob McDowell and Jim McDowell. Martha worked for Illinois Consolidated as a telephone operator and was a homemaker. She loved country music and knew many country music stars from travels to Nashville, Branson. Martha enjoyed watching TV. She did not enjoy watching game shows. That kind of made me a little irate. The grandma that I knew watched RFD TV and loved Larry's Country Diner. Most of all, Martha cherished spending time with her family. She will be greatly missed and fondly remembered by all those who knew her. And of course, memorial donations in honor may be given to Schilling Funeral Home to assist with funeral expenses. Let me just talk about this grand lady who was my grandma. You see, she was not only the wife of Wayne McDowell, 72 years, she was my grandma, and I was her caregiver. Because I lived with them, and it was no stranger for me every morning for the past 2.5 years when she started needing help taking her own medication, that I would have to use applesauce and put her iron pill, her stomach pill, 3 heart pills to control her blood pressure because she had high blood pressure. And then we would try to get her to take a breathing treatment, which she was very stubborn and hard-headed, and became like, if I want to, I will. At 2 o'clock would be my lunchtime, so that became the time that she would get her noontime pill and then a breathing treatment. Then after work, and it would be after we had supper, she would have bedtime pill for her heart again. That heart, I tell you, we had pills after pills, and a Valium, and then another breathing treatment if she'd take it, and bed. But I don't want to remember the decline as much as I want to remember the woman she is and always will be to me. She was not only a homemaker, she made the home. And I can remember trips to not only Branson and Nashville, but the Walmarts and Kmarts and all the other marts in between growing up. But hair appointments were a big deal for us, just to spend time with each other. She never liked my straight hair or my long hair. She always wanted me to have curls or permanents. But I can remember fondly, several things from when we would go. There was this one time we went down for a Riley or Henson reunion, one of the two, and it was out in the country. And she never drove, but she thought she could instruct my grandpa on how to drive to get there. That will be one of my most fond moments, because the further we went, the road was getting smaller and smaller to almost nothing. When we had the windows down, because Grandpa, his redheaded temper was getting short, and he wanted to know, where in the world is this place? So something told him to stop, and just beyond, we were hearing weird noises, so that's why he stopped the car. He had me get out, and we went over, and he goes, I think beyond that hill is a creek. And yes, there was a creek. We got back in the car, and I can always remember how Grandma thought she just knew, that the place was right over that hill. And Grandpa was like, if we go over that hill, we're going to a creek. So unless your family knows how to swim and wants to have that reunion in a creek, they're not there. That's just one thing that I can recall. When we went to Twitty City in Hendersonville, Tennessee, late Conway Twitty was right there on the grounds, driving around on a golf cart. And me and my grandma had taken a walk at that time. She had 2 knee replacements, 2 pinned hips, and a back that was wearing out, and it was becoming disc rubbing on disc. But her spirit always kept her going. And before she even started walking with a cane, we went to that Hendersonville trip to Tennessee as a family, and she spotted Conway Twitty, and I was like, don't bother him. That was my big thing. I was always backward, not wanting to bother people, and Grandma, she had no problem. And she was always confident and always classy, and she was like, Conway, is that you? And Conway kind of looked at her and I'm like, well, yeah. And so she says, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like a picture with you and my granddaughter. And he looked at her funny, and he was like, well, most people want their picture with me. And she was like, no, my granddaughter. And that's just something I can always recall about my grandma, is that she always was so proud of her family that she would rather put them first than herself. And he was even taken back by that. But I got my picture with him, long story short, and it was just an unforgettable trip. Every trip with him was unforgettable, though, whether it be to that or Cracker Barrel. When we started going to Cracker Barrel, Hee Haw was still on TV, and we went down to Lebanon, Tennessee, and we followed them all the way up to the restaurant Po Folks. Bill Anderson and a bunch of country singers originally had that restaurant. I guess that's why it's so special to me, because I can recall so many family dinners, family and close friends gathering at Po Folks, be it in Tennessee, Missouri, or Illinois, and we would eat at those restaurants, and I really wish Po Folks would make a comeback here. I can't say that enough. Oh, goodness. But there's so many good moments like that growing up that I can recall that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. But the sad moments would be watching her have to struggle to continue with the pills and the breathing treatments, and at the end everybody was talking so much that I don't know, I'm stressing out here. I'm trying to hold it together and do this. When we went from, let's back up. After Mike passed away, which we all wish he didn't, but heaven is great and good, and I'm sure that it's better now that the circle is unbroken up there with everybody, but my grandma took it extremely hard. You see, there's these blocks of wood that my dad, Mike, built for my grandma to get in and out of the SUVs. And I'm just going to throw this back to Mike real quick. When I bought my SUV, I can still remember my stepdad going, no, you didn't. And he was joking with me and carrying on, and he says, if you get that SUV, I'll have to build you a block for Grandma to get in and out of the SUV. At that time, I was like going, I was just getting an SUV, so I wasn't really thinking other than that's the car I always wanted, was an SUV. So I was so grateful that he went to so much trouble to build these blocks, wooden blocks, so that she could step up on that and get right in without any problem. Because Grandma had such problems with her pinned hips and her knees. And of course, that back, it was starting to arch over. Well, he had made those blocks because I got the SUV. And my grandma always appreciated that more than words could say. It was always the little things with Grandma, because if you took time to actually spend time or showed that you care, then she loved you for life. That's all that mattered. And so from then on, after we lost Mike, we saw a decline with Grandma for wanting to eat. And it wasn't like we were keeping food from her. Food was available. We would go out, get food. She'd eat a couple pieces. I'm done. I'm full. So when we went to see Dr. Cavus, he noticed she wasn't arguing with him. And that's unusual. And I'll never forget that day. Going to the doctor was so rough. Getting her to move was so rough. Getting her out of bed to get dressed to go to that doctor appointment was so rough. And when we got there, and after he said, you guys are going to Sarah Bush, I just knew what was going to happen. I felt it in my bones. I said, please don't send us there. I about wanted to beg with him. But he said, she's limped over in her wheelchair. That's not her, Donna. We've got to do something. At that point, I agreed. We went out there. And her congestive heart failure, her pneumonia, 2 strands, was overwhelming. And after we spent lots of time there, the first bout, they decided they were going to send her down to Mattoon Healthcare Rehab because she was refusing to walk. Now, everybody's asking me, why was she refusing? If I knew that, that'd be $1 million question winner. I don't know. All I can tell you is I think maybe in the back of her mind, she thought that place down there, Mattoon Healthcare, hadn't changed, which it had. Kelly, her favorite nurse, works on the other side. On the side of the rehab works these 21-year-old nurses who need to go back to school. Nurses that I've known for a while in other places that I've worked that have no bedside manner. And they need to go back to school. And would I recommend a loved one or a friend or a family member or anybody I care about go to that place? No. It changed so drastically that they would not adjust the room temperature. And they said they had to keep the temperature low in that wing for dialysis patients. So as a congestive heart failure patient, they weren't too worried about that. She was okay for a while and was walking, doing stairs. But the treatment she got from the nurses had a lot to be desired. Elise, the 21-year-old, told her she didn't know how to suck properly and was practically in her face one night, which we had words several nights, and she knew exactly how I felt about her. And I turned her in, and everybody was like, oh, she's one of our best nurses. I can't get over that. Let me tell you something. If that's your best, I'd hate to see your worst. Teresa, one night when my mom and Grandma was at the table, Grandma was getting worse with her eating habits. And she said, Martha, if you don't eat, you're going to go to the hospital and you'll never go home. All this treatment that she got there, what goes around comes around. And I cannot say this enough, that when you are in an establishment, especially the rehab side, you should not be talking that way to anybody, let alone a patient. Well, December 22nd happened, which the 21st we celebrated Christmas with Grandma. Looking back now, maybe we should have opened every present she had that day, rather than just one. Hindsight's 20/20. Um, the next day, there was a phone call made, and she was taken to ER. Sarah Bush, again. Well, at that point, we went through so many struggles there. But the granddaddy of them all was before New Year's Eve. And Dominic Perino, the doctor that shouldn't be employed, and I pray to God, gets his license pulled because he's not much of a doctor. A quack is what he is. He threw his stethoscope on the bed, barely missed hitting my grandma's feet, and in front of a patient representative, a team of nurses, because I dialed 777 rapid response, he looked at me and he goes, "First and foremost, who dialed that in this room?" And I said, "Excuse me, this is my grandma. You are her doctor." He goes, "I know who I am. I don't need a refresher course. I need to know who dialed 777 because this person is in the wrong." And I said, "I did, and I'd do it again." I said, "Look at all these people you got standing around doing absolutely nothing while my grandma is laying in this bed, not looking like herself, and you haven't done one thing you said you were going to do." At that point, Dominic comes at us full force and basically calls us all a bunch of, well, I'm not going to go there. And he just throws that stethoscope, looks at my grandpa, threatens to eject him from the hospital over his concerned wife because of how concerned he is. And furthermore, his nursing staff stands there dumbfounded because they're looking for instruction from him, which he's not providing. So yes, if there was anybody that needs removed, it's him. At that point, I had had enough with Mr. Dominic Perino that I demanded he leave the room because they weren't offering another doctor. It was either that or nothing else, which that was wrong. We had him off the case at that point, and we were going to take her to Carl. To get an ambulance, I guess this is why I'm not so upset because I'm so fired up. To get an ambulance from Mattoon to Champaign, Illinois for Carl Clinic took way too long. Any God-given person knows that if someone is very critical, you don't make them wait an hour and a half. The family, which was me, my grandpa, and my mom, arrived at Carl Clinic awaiting on an ambulance. Not only that, my nieces, they drove up from Effingham and Louisville, Illinois, still beat the ambulance. And why? Because on the way up there, we get a call from one of the nurses saying they couldn't find a respiratory therapist to ride up there. Well, they couldn't take Mitchell Jordan, so they had to find another ambulance service, is what they told us. Call again after we got up there and we're all waiting. Where are they at? "Oh, they're on their way. She's out of our care. It'll be another 10 or 20 minutes. Okay, wait another 10 or 20 minutes. Call again. Took 3 calls. Back and forth to Sarah Bush before that ambulance reached Carl Clinic. Shouldn't have taken that long. So at that point, which they blame, of course, Sarah Bush blames Mitchell Jordan. Mitchell Jordan blames Sarah Bush because, after all, Mitchell Jordan ended up coming up there with only 2 people, not 3. Let's get that story straight. There was no other person that rode along in that ambulance. So it was just the 2 ambulance people, not a third. I don't care what the paper says. I don't care who signed it. I know who was there. Let's get it right. Well, Dr. Ahmed later came on the case. He wasn't the first doctor on. I forget who the first doctor was. We had teams and teams of doctors, but they were well skilled and well prepared in some ways. Some ways, not all the ways. We had a respiratory person that went in and drug, in her room, they went in and took a needle and drug water off of her body, 2.5 liters to be exact. And I will give them credit for that. Sarah Bush didn't do that. It took Carl to do that. Did they want to do that at Sarah Bush? No, they wanted her to lie there or be transferred back to Mattoon Healthcare in a cold room because Dominic Perino said that wasn't his problem and die there. So you tell me, I think he ought to be responsible. But they'll probably still let that loser have a job even though he don't deserve one. But I will never go to him. Anyway, over back to Carl. Dr. Ahmad had told us, I'm not going to get the timing right. I'm upset, so just work with me. That we had to go to hospice side of Carl. But he promised us she wouldn't be removed from Carl, ever. That became a whole nother thing, a whole nother ball of wax. But, goodness, nurses, doctors, I've had enough. I don't want any more. Knock on wood. Not for a long, long time. But he told us that there was no, that when she would eat, he was afraid that the food wasn't making it to her stomach. It was stopping in the lungs. And he didn't know what was causing it. And the tests he wanted to run, he couldn't run because she was too frail from not eating. But here's what I will never understand, and this is the part I do blame Carl on. When the family, like myself, Cousin Penny, Grandpa, would go up there, if we would feed her, she'd eat. But if they tried, and she pushed it away, they couldn't make her eat. They would just say she refused and stop. So this hospice care or comfort care, whatever the heck you want to call it, most of the time the door was closed. But you would have to put gloves, a robe, and a mask on in order to go see her. And your heart would break every time you'd see her. Especially on Thursday, the last day that she was with us. In my mind, for years to come, I will always see her reaching for Grandpa. And having this look in her eye that she wanted to tell him something, but she couldn't. And then, she would try and speak and get the words out about who everybody was. But I don't know if she really knew who we were. She did, back to Mattoon Healthcare, I just want to get back to this one little thing that will bug me till the day that I die. There was a spot that came on Grandma's ankle, and Teresa asked her where she got it at, and she acted so scared. And Elise had worked the night before. In my mind, it will always be Elise that caused it, even though there's no way to prove it. I just wanted to say that. Back to Carl. So, Thursday, the decline was happening very quickly. But in my mind, I kept hope alive because I was able to get yogurt down her and either applesauce or pudding. I can't remember the other thing. And I had posted on Facebook that Grandpa would love to hear from either Becky Hobbs, Wade Hayes, or Bill Anderson, because this would be great for especially Grandma's spirits to be uplifted at this time. One country star answered me, and that was Becky Hobbs, and for that I'll be forever grateful. I held the phone up into Grandma's ear when Becky called after I talked to her and Grandpa talked to her. And she kind of pushed the phone towards me, so that's when I had to take the phone and tell Becky that I got the phone and told her a little bit of what happened. None of us can ever really be sure what happened, but we know some of the events that led her to this. Becky was very kind, very, very wonderful. And at the visitation and funeral, we played Angels Among Us, and that was for her. So I want her to know that that was played. And that was in their honor of their friendship, because Grandma always brought her a chocolate cake and always enjoyed talking to her. She loved Becky dearly, like family. If you knew my grandma, nobody was a stranger. They were just a person, a friend she hadn't made yet. And that was one of her favorite sayings. Her favorite color, purple. That's why I'm wearing purple. But there's a lot of people I want to thank. Cousin Penny McDowell. If it was at Mattoon Healthcare and she was wondering where Cousin Penny was and she had me text you or she had me call you, she was always concerned because you took time out for her. And that meant the world. The gift of time was the best gift you could ever give her. Besides that red and black blanket, that was her favorite. Cousin Ann Riley, she's provided me with lots of stories about my grandma that I never knew. So I want to thank her for that. Our neighbors over here, they were pallbearers. They also have brought over treats throughout the years and have made my grandma so happy. They have the most adorable little boy and little girl, and now another little boy. And uh, she always was so tickled by that little boy or the little girl, and would say, "Look at them, they're so cute." Uh, I want to say also, if you knew my grandma, she had a love for animals. She absolutely loved animals, whether it be a stray cat, a squirrel, a bird. She'd make sure everybody had food and water. Here's a funny story for you. Like I said, she came from Salem, Illinois area. She had an aunt down there, or a relation down there named Reethy. I don't remember Reethy's last name, so bear with me. I think it's Riley. Anyway, there was a bush she got off of Reethy's farm, and it's out to the side of our house. And she always says, "That's a hen bush." So proud of that bush. She'd watch from her window and watch every spring to make sure it was growing. And there's these dishes out front that she would keep for like wildlife or stray animals to drink get a drink out of, drink of water. And every summertime, if I wasn't home or the nieces were home, which is her great-granddaughter, she would say, "Get out there and fill up Aunt Reethy." And that's just something she would love to do, whether it was the squirrel feeders, watching the squirrels play, the birds eating the bird seed. She loved that. Another thing she loved was flowers. And whether it be planting them out here along the side of her fence, or having me plant those famous morning glories over here to the side of the house, or around the house, there's just so many beautiful things about my grandma. She was classy, she was giving, she was loving, tender, soft-hearted, golden-hearted, and she just always wanted to help others, to help themselves better. So, of course, her greatest wish was to watch me get married. But as Grandpa told me, she will, just from a different place. And she'll have a front row seat and probably influence it. Just saying. My nieces, Mackenzie, I know Grandma was not always easy to get along with, but she loved you dearly. Taylor, when I wasn't available to do doctor's appointment, hair appointments, you helped out. She thought the world of you. In fact, closer to Christmas, she asked when you were coming home for Christmas. And she wanted to make sure she saw you. Haley, I can remember when you and your mama and dad would come up here to visit, and we had Kobe and Morris at the time, and there's just so many different memories. Eric, there was some great memories with you as well. I hope, most of all, from all of this, there's a famous saying from Dog the Bounty Hunter: graves don't talk back. So what I want you to do is make sure that you give the gift of time for people that matter most to you. When your schedule seems so busy, or life seems so overwhelming, make sure you take time out to either text, call, show up somebody's house. Make sure that they know that you care, or that they matter. I do have to give thanks to CB. I heard that he made the extra choice to go up to Champaign and sit with Grandma. So I want to say thank you for that. And I'm not going to say any more on that. I'm going to drop it. But thank you for that. Other than that, she loved country music. We went to so many country shows over at Nashville North and Taylorville, Arcola Broom Festival, Windsor Harvest Picnic. I can't even think of all of them, but we had so many blessings, and the greatest gift that we had was the gift of time that we got to spend with her throughout the years. I am so grateful for the 93 years, but I wish and I pray that there could have been a 94, and on and on and on. That's all I'm going to say. And she truly was an angel among us, and she still is, and always will be. Love you forever and always, Grandma. Good night.